Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Active Kreative Perspectives. I'm Valerie, your guide on this transformative journey where your unique prism of life unfolds in full spectrum. And today we have this amazing and beautiful voice that came to perspective that joins me from India, right? So, Vanashree, can you just share where you are at the moment?
Thank you, Valerie, for inviting me here. It's such a pleasure. I'm from Mumbai, India, on the western coast, and I'm just very happy to be here.
And how this happened that you started practicing art therapy and started your own Heal Foundation. Can you just share your life story or the practice that you do?
Thank you, with great pleasure. So, my journey to being an art based therapist was sort of not a linear path. I began my career actually with management training. I worked in the corporate life for like a good 15 or 18 years, and then decided that I wanted to do something more meaningful for the society. Fortunately for me, my pre-management training was in the sciences, so it was easy for me to go back to. So I retrained myself, and this was the time that I was, an adult with choice, and I decided that what I would like to go with is to see if there's an alternative, holistic method of communicating or creating a difference in society. So I sort of was looking around, and my first stop was to learn teacher training, to be trained as a teacher for Waldorf education.
I've had
So,
exactly the same experience as you. Yes,
oh,
I really wanted to, when I started searching for what could be closer to what I do, the teacher was the only thing. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So I did a Waldorf teacher training, and Waldorf is I mean, for the benefit of people who don't know, Waldorf is an educational approach started by Rudolf Steiner a good 200 years before, and it started in Austria. But essentially, it was meant so that the when you touch the child, it is not just intellectually but rather holistically. And Rudolf Steiner's approach came from the Bhagavad Gita. So he had studied Indian philosophy, and he put formats to it which will make it easier to transmit that wisdom into a curriculum. And so we came a full circle when I realized that how wonderful this is. And my children went to Waldorf school, so that became a wonderful journey. But then I realized I don't really like to teach. I
So
can't be in a
can I just
classroom.
ask you about your children? So they went to the Steiner school in Mumbai, right? So
Yes.
they did the
It's,
whole 12 years, or what do you
oh,
have?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And do you
And
see the difference to the normal education?
yes, absolutely. I'm glad you were asking, and this is also in the scope of this discussion, because I think it shifted me, and it shifted my daughter was already going, the older one, was already going to a normal school. And because I could not find Waldorf school that was close to my home, it needed her to travel at least for an hour before she could reach the school, because it's a small school. In those days, it was really small. Now it's grown, called Tridha.
Hmm.
And really, Tridha stands for the connection between the head, heart, hands, the
Trinity.
three ways, yeah, of communicating with respect to education. And so while I was figuring out a way of how she could, at the young age of 4, travel this much distance and attend Waldorf school, I would volunteer. And she once asked me, they call us Ai in mom is Ai. She said, Ai, you go so far and you travel and you have so much fun. Why can't I join that school? And that really made me feel like, yeah, I mean, I'm sort of fixated on the in essentials. If she would be so happy to be part of that school. Why not just take care of things as they go? And truly, that was a decision I never regretted. My older daughter, so here in India, the approach to education is very competitive. mainly because of lack of resources and population explosion. So there are classrooms where you have as many you could have as many as 70 children, and so it's very hard for the teacher to actually look after the individual needs of children. And it's rote learning a lot. In recent times we've learned that that's not such a bad thing, but emphasis that much imbalanced emphasis on rote learning is not good for children too. So when she went to a Waldorf school, the worry that most of my friends and family had about my children was that she may not grow up to have that competitive spirit of having a career where she can actually fight for the limited
That's right.
seats. Yeah, but that didn't happen. It's essentially what happens is when you feel centered within yourself, when you feel seen as an individual in your childhood, and encouraged for your strengths and supported for your vulnerabilities, then it's a different experience for the child. Not to mention that the creative approach to solution to life is solution oriented, isn't it? You're not looking focused on the problems as much as thinking, how can I find a solution to these issues I'm facing? So even for children, that's such a valuable education. So my older daughter has just completed, she's a doctor, MBBS doctor, and she just completed. It's such a competitive field here.
Yeah.
It's just breathless with as about 10 lakh, that means about a million children appear for the entrance exam. And in government, which is the most wanted seats, medical seats, there are only 600.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine she was able to acquire a seat in the top 0.001% or whatever is the percentage there. And that all came because she, of course, this is the field she chose, and she's doing well. My younger daughter is into design, and so she chose a completely different path. But really, the faith in knowing what you would like to do and following it with a purpose, that's what holistic education does for you.
That's amazing. And yeah, so continue with how did you start it? So by seeing your kids going through Rudolf Steiner school and yourself, into teaching, how did you came to the art therapy?
Yeah, thank you. So I was, because I had to shift my careers, I knew that as an adult I would have to retrain myself. And I soon, because I was volunteering, realized I'm not quite cut out to be a classroom teacher. Mm, the next part that was helpful for me to, uh, to explore was as a therapist. So I trained myself as a special needs educator and also as a counselor. So I was doing this training while I was volunteering at places, so I gain experience side by side. And while I was doing that, someone told me, have you heard of arts based therapy? That would be perfect for you because you're so interested in arts. And I hadn't heard of arts based therapy at all, because in those days when I did when I trained myself, the course was available only in one city in India, which is called Pune. It's close to Mumbai. It's not that far, but I had no idea. And that was, I always think of her with, thankfulness, because I then explored it and I said, this is it for me. And I, without hesitation, joined the course. In those days, it was run by WCCLF Foundation. It still exists, but they don't run the arts-based therapy anymore, because after running the course for over a decade, they did the teacher training course where I was one of the therapists invited to as train the trainer so that I could
Mm-hmm.
become educator for arts based therapy.
Yes, yeah.
So really, as soon I practiced as a therapist for a few years, and then I was invited to be an educator for arts based therapy. So right now, what I do is I work as an arts based therapy educator. And then when I got a chance to be an educator for arts based therapy, I'm taking several jumps here, I realize, but I just wanted to summarize. Um, and as a educator, I realized that one of the areas in the community, in society, where they would benefit most from arts-based therapy is really the vulnerable populations, and often those are the populations without resources. Even if they knew about arts-based therapy, which they don't, they would still not have the resources to to engage an arts-based program as a part of their curriculum. And so I started a non-profit NGO where I thought if I could seek funding from corporates and use that benefit to work with communities. That is the reason I started my foundation that's called Heal Foundation, but it really stands for Holistic Expression and Abilities for Living Foundation.
Beautiful. And in all that said, there was like such a profound journey to go, because everything you just said, it basically puts together different modalities, right? So from teaching arts and then understanding that I think in Australia we have the same uh, challenge that the disability center is requiring the art therapy more than anyone else, and usually people who needs it, they can't afford it, or even like any treatment that people require, usually they can't afford, and art therapy is not as famous or popular, and people are not aware of it. And what do you see like in India with that field of, is it growing? Do people realize like the potential that it's not a psychology, but it is still as impactful as psychology would be?
With that respect, we are very clear, at least the arts-based therapy field, that it's an approach that transcends just psychology, isn't it? Because arts based therapy, when my teachers visualized this course, they had a visionary approach to arts at the time when arts was still considered as singular modalities such as visual art. So if there was therapy, then there was visual art therapy and music therapy, and then drama therapy, all of which are extremely valuable. But when so in India, the community arts have always been, all ancient cultures, really, isn't it? All ancient cultures have had an approach to arts which is holistic and healing oriented. So when arts-based therapy as a course was um, uh, conceptualized by my teachers at WCCLF, they looked at it as integrative arts. And when you look at it as integrated arts, then it is not, we are not limiting ourselves to psychological frameworks, because limiting ourselves to that, just a psychological framework, is actually having us to um, uh, sort of when we are looking at the work of art, it is not, then the process is not as important as the product, and then you are sort of basing your therapy on the end product, which is not how arts based therapy or any arts therapy in modern day is meant to work. Arts based therapy, with whichever modality we are you looking at, whether it's visual art or drama therapy or rhythm as a therapy, is meant to be process oriented for exploration and expression. And so it's not necessary that we only use psychological frameworks. So that part, I'm happy that for people who are aware of arts based therapy, know that that is not a limitation, at least here in India. So it's more like expressive arts, except that we are not looking at the frameworks of analysis, analyzing the
Yeah.
work of art.
Yes. So it's interesting, even in that 2 minutes of your discussion, there's so many boxes of how it should be called and how we want to explain what it is, because it's all about the experience, right? So if you've never experienced, you're trying to explain that what it is from different points of frameworks, it still doesn't cover the effect of it. So, how do you think, apart from what it's called, what's the effect of it did you see in your work on people?
Oh my goodness, that's a Huge question. It's so I work. One of uh, the kind of people who come as a part, to come to for the course are not necessarily psychologists. Like I mentioned, it's meant to actually work with vulnerable populations, and so arts based therapy here is considered to be a complementary therapy once you've got your primary training in place. So you could come into arts based therapy as a psychologist, a clinical psychotherapist, counselor, or even an occupational therapist, a homeopathic doctor, and even a community worker, a social worker,
That's right.
right? Right. So you don't necessarily need psychology as a training foundation. You could also be a special needs educator who's also now trained in arts based therapy. So really, as an educator, I needed to have experience in all of these fields in order to do my best and share my experiences as a educator of arts based therapy. And that journey has been an eye opener, because when we are looking at working with arts as a modality for expression and exploration, really that experience is what transforms people. Just the idea of connecting with themselves is so liberating, and it makes one feel connected, it makes one feel stronger in themselves, isn't it? So you don't need to necessarily feel imbalanced within yourself. So not just emotional regulation, but also emotional centering happens because you are in touch with your art. Now that art doesn't need to be interpreted, that's the beauty of it,
Yes.
because the moment you start interpreting the art, then it can sometimes trigger people who are feeling vulnerable for their art to be interpreted and explained back to them, when it can later turn out that that's not what they meant at all. So they may not be able to verbalize that that's not what they meant to do, but it does feel uneasy in their heart that this interpretation is not sitting well with me. And so it's best to have the client if need be, as a closure, sort of share what they've done, what was their intention in coming off out with this. Either it's a visual art, or whether when we are talking of drama therapy, what's the embodying meant for them, right? So when we have that dialogue, it opens that dialogue, then it uh, I've seen populations, say with mental health, where there was no speech at all because of trauma, there was no communication, when they were depressed, actually express themselves, say through puppets, because it's a projective medium, isn't it? It's safer, it feels less threatening. And so the speech actually comes, and everyone is just taken aback that, oh, they finally spoke, and they had something to say. Or for special needs children
Yeah.
who are otherwise non-functional, otherwise you will not find them wanting to engage in anything in particular, mainly because of their impairments, the fact that they are not necessarily treated as individuals, they're treated like a group, isn't it? Mostly, at least in India, because of lack of resources, it's a group. And there's not as much time to give individual value. And when they are allowed to express themselves through arts, they just flourish. Their personalities sort of shine through. And so in different ways, I just came from a camp last week, where I was working with um, young women who have been who are survivors of violence, and they are living in a shelter home because they have run away from home or being asked to leave. So basically all of them traumatized. And I've been working with them, of course, for the last many months, and then this camp experience was an intensive, so that we could work with the arts with these young women who are survivors of violence. And so it was safe to do body map, because I wouldn't launch into a body map straight away, right? So since we've worked together for a while, we did a body map. And still, body map is such an intensive experience. It sometimes feels intrusive, or makes one feel vulnerable. And so it was with them. They were doubtful. They didn't completely feel confident that they would be able to do what's expected. And I said to them, nothing is expected.
No
You just do what you feel
expectation.
like
That's
doing.
right.
Yeah, there is absolutely, just do what you feel like doing. And then if you wish to step out of the circle because you feel that this is not the time to participate, that's okay too. So the moment that permission was given and the fact that there is no expectation, they were at it for the next 2 hours. And then once again, when we asked if they would like to share, so there was a bit of hesitation in sharing. But the when they started the sharing, it was so profound. And there were tears and there were
Yep.
smiles and laughter, because finally they met themselves
Yep.
in that moment. And that was such a beautiful
It is
uh,
magical. And in my practice, there was no one time when, people that engage in the process, that there was no magic happening. Yes, it works 100% all the time, no matter where you are and what conditions happening. Like as everything you just said, it just proves that, like, no matter what mentality or culture we are in, it works with everyone. It's just such a pure instinct that we have to open up through art. And the sad part that there's not much awareness, right? And I would like to know from your perspective where you are, how is mental health taken? Because, from my background in Ukraine, unless before the war, the mental health was something you don't talk about at all because it seems like a sickness, right? So it's only now because of what happened, it becomes number one topic. So, what's happening in your culture? How do you think people approach mental health at the moment?
Well, I would say that in the last, especially post COVID,
Mm,
mental health has come to the forefront a little bit. And so, not just that there is awareness, but acceptance. I mean, it's no
mm-hmm.
longer considered taboo, because a lot of us in India, at least, we felt we were. In the lockdown for almost 8 months, and it was a very strict lockdown. So a lot of people had a lot of mental health issues, and so it's easier to speak about it, the fact that they need help and that it's okay to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the ground reality is, and so there is a lot of talk in terms of needing, at a government level,
Yeah.
or even with NGOs, needing to support mental health more than there was before. But my experience has been, and I'm limiting the answer to my experience, has been, it's mostly talk. It hasn't
Yeah.
really translated that much
Mm-hmm.
into a real shift where mental health is prioritized at least somewhat better than before.
Yes.
So you find it's easier to talk about it. It's easier for people to say, yes, I appreciate mental health, but not much is really done at the ground
Mm-hmm.
level compared to how it was before. So that's the sad reality
Yes,
for me.
there's still, yeah, I see the same. So there's still a long path to go when people will go to the dentist as much as they go to the art therapist, right? It's still that barrier that it's too expensive and I can be without it. I'll be fine. I've never used it before. You
Yeah.
know, we have, yeah, I guess it's the world crisis will have to push it into the limits when people have to become aware that it's a must and you have to go through it and accept that it's just a regular thing to do and have a space. And with what you said, that connecting to to yourself is, there's no space at the moment in society, is from my view, there's no space for us to connect to ourselves. It's always to like engage with everyone but not engage in yourself. So from your perspective, where do you think society is going? And you have kids, where do you think the society is leading in our space or in general with where we are at the moment with so much new changes coming in, and challenges but opportunities at the same time. How do you see it?
Oh, that's another lovely question. And I have a lot to say. I'll just summarize quickly. Basically, I feel that, um, progress is great. But mindless progress, where, for example, everything in balance is great. AI in balance is great, where the world is moving. But the worry is, that because social media and digital media make everything accessible to everyone, if we don't use personal responsibility, that we feel that ethical use of media and consumption, so each of us regulate. There need not be an outer regulatory body, but unfortunately the way the world is moving, the concern is that we are dropping our ethics along the path. There is no um, uh, uh, so we are looking at the impact of our words, of our actions, is not is seemingly our responsibility anymore. So that is the sad part, where I feel, incidentally, I also happen to be a mindfulness teacher. I have studied Buddhist psychology and mindfulness for the last over 20 years. And coming from that perspective, the fact also that my arts based therapy course is based on the foundations of mindfulness and arts based therapy, I have to say that the more external oriented we have become, the more there is a need to shift the lens inward and sort of connect with ourselves, to come back home to ourselves. That's the greatest need. And one of the things I always recommend is, for your own emotional regulation, because each one would benefit from that, isn't it? To regulate yourself, to have an ethical perspective, where you say that I'm not just going to look at um, what is good for me, but rather how can I benefit myself and benefit others around me. That makes for a happy world and a happy society. For that, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he is the one who's the teacher of Buddhist psychology in today's world, where he combines science and research, neuroscience and research, with ancient principles of Buddhist philosophy and psychology. He says that, for everyone, I would recommend meditation, secular meditation, non religious, simply connecting with ourselves. And he says that everyone should meditate for at least 20 minutes a day, simply connecting with yourself, so that you're into mental and emotional hygiene, right? And then he says, for busy people, if you're really really busy and you don't have the time to find 20 minutes a day, find an hour. Because the busier you are, the more it is needed, isn't it? And you'd find that, somehow we have so much time for our physical appearance. We give that much time for social media, but we have no time for our mental hygiene and mental health, mental flourishing. And that is, I think, a key requirement as we go forth.
And from it sounds amazing how simple everything is, because for me, I find, I do believe in Buddhist philosophy, and I practice it since I was 15. But the thing is, meditation is not for everyone. And I found that a lot of people kind of reject it. And then art therapy is meditation, because you go into that flow state where you leave time frame and you just go into quantum without feeling, where you are in that meditative state, and allowing yourself to be busy while, drawing or making any scribbles. You can go into that meditation and connect with yourself, which is such an easy tool. So maybe we should ask Dalai Lama to combine meditation and art flow state together, so people who are not open to meditation can try art meditation, or art mindfulness as a tool as well. And in saying that, it's just so simple that I guess from our awareness of where it's coming and how the society is in demand to actually stop, we can see it, but it will take a while till these steps will be part of our daily routine, right? So a lot of people now they're practicing daily morning meditation or like during the day meditation, but it all sounds like a trend rather than a normal thing. It's like, oh, how do you find time to have these 20 minutes? So but I feel by just making it a normal thing to do and putting in our kids as an example so they don't understand other ways, that's the easiest ways to implement it in the whole world, that we have to find time to stop. Like everyone should have a place to stop and a place, um, you know in their daily routine as a must, as we find time to eat, right?
Absolutely.
I guess
So
that's
I just
the
want
only
to
way.
chip in when you said, if I may, sorry, I interrupted you. I was just saying that you're right, meditation is not for everyone. But when you say that, you're actually referring to meditation where we sit on a cushion, close our eyes, and begin to watch our breath or something else, right? Meditation also exists in action.
That's right.
And you rightly said, right? The arts based therapy that I follow is based on Buddhist principles, which means that we can actually have meditative movement,
That's
right?
right.
There's already tai chi, but also meditate walking meditation is
Yep.
has been around for a good 2600 years, since the time of Buddha. And there are so many other practices
Yep.
that can work for those for whom meditation does not seem to be the right thing. The other thing I want to say is, increasingly, while mindfulness and meditation has become such trends, like you rightly said, they are fads. That is primarily because meditation is being taught by people who haven't spent enough time experiencing it themselves. You read somewhere, you follow a YouTube, and then you begin to practice and teach meditation. That can be dangerous.
Hmm.
Really, if you have the right teachers and you have the right guidance, then um, practicing meditation need not be such a difficult thing. I mean, it need not be 20 minutes. We can begin with 5 minutes. Even that can make a difference, in attention training. And we are talking secular meditation. So,
Yes.
breath meditation can be just attention training,
Yeah.
awareness training, not anything other than that, right? So that's also possible
So what you're
as a thought.
saying is people just need more tools to understand what they can apply, because they are having information without experiencing it. Yes, and
Absolutely.
that's where it's coming from, that misconception of, oh, you don't have time for it. And in your, so you've said this beautiful thing that people are coming home when they connect to themselves. So what is your home for you at the moment, at this present time? Where did you find your home, that feeling?
Wow. Really, when we work with Buddhist philosophy and psychology, the home is impermanent. It's a place which keeps shifting, and you need to connect with yourself from moment to moment. And what I felt being at home, say yesterday, need not be the same thing today. So I really have a meditation practice every day, and I have learned over the years not to stress out on whether I get to practice or not, because there are days when I don't. And so, sitting meditation practice. So I have learned to connect with myself wherever I am. It could be, my one of my gurus is Bingyu Rinpoche, and what he says is short time, many times, anywhere meditation. And that is where I feel I can find my home, in the moments of stress, in moments of challenging cycles in my own personal life, which there are in everyone's lives. I have found that when I center myself and come back to just connecting with who I am in the moment, it becomes possible. There are possibilities that simply open out for you because you're not necessarily goal oriented. You're the path becomes the goal. So I'm simply focused on experiencing my present moment, and that sort of becomes a restful place for me.
And if you may share, how does it feel when you're there in that place for you? What is that feeling, or color, or, texture? How does it feel for you?
Um, I have to say that one of the misunderstandings that people have of coming home is that it is a blissful place full of joy and happiness. It need not always be that. Be coming back home and connecting with your present moment awareness can be in that moment a feeling of discomfort if that's where you are in that moment. So connecting and meditating need not always be a, in fact, it is mostly not a blissful experience. The point is knowing who you are in this moment. So if I'm in a place of discomfort, just knowing that I'm in that place of discomfort and connecting, so to speak, being friendly with my discomfort rather than pushing it away, and not being terribly attached to my place of happiness if I'm feeling tremendous happiness, because really what we know as happiness is still um, very dependent on outside circumstances. I'm happy when everything else is going well for me. That's not the happiness we are looking for. Rather, we are looking for a centered happiness which does not shift because things outside shifted. So when you're looking for that kind of contentment, then you have to be comfortable with whatever comes up in that moment.
And that's why I asked, because I also find that people have that misconception that home, or getting connecting to themselves feels amazing, and it's always, like a warm hug or something. And when they don't receive it, they get frustration. Yes. And I think it's very important to allow people just to get into a place, I would say, of non-judgment and no expectations. So they just
Absolutely.
feel they can just be themselves without
Yeah,
any attachment to it. Yes. And it's important because um, this misconception create the depression and, a lot of mental issues with accepting that, oh, I don't have the beautiful conditioned place, why I'm not there, and then judgment on themselves, right? So I guess it's such a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful for you to share this and these moments from your life, and and your practice that you've been doing in the Heal Foundation. I wish there was more people that went through that place that you've been every day, and I hope we're getting into that space soon, that people will start connecting to themselves more and more. And thank you for doing the art therapy, because for me it's the language that we can connect to themselves. Thank you so much. And I ask you how people can find you, or reach out to you? What's the best way?
well, I have a website called anantara.org, so they can connect there. My phone number and my email is mentioned there. So thank you for asking that, and thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you so much. And just to finish off,